Luring. Luring is how we guide a dog somewhere, but there's a right way to do it and there's definitely a wrong way to do it. Luring should just mean that the dog's following you, but lots of people feed the dog as they're going, and this reduces the dog's ability to concentrate on what they're doing. Therefore, learning is much, much slower. In the beginning, it's not the end of the world to have some food sticking out of your hand, letting the dog nibble. So when maybe puppies are first learning, or a tentative dog is first learning, a shy dog, that's not an issue. You can do that. You can leave a little bit of food out. But very quickly, we want to move to a closed fist. This is the picture our dogs should see when they're getting lured. The seam of our hand is towards their face, and this allows us to say yes and open our hand, allowing them to get the food right away. Now, having a closed hand means the dog can think quite a bit more, because while he is following our hand, he's thinking about what he can do to get this hand to open. He's learned that biting and trying to bother the hand is not effective. And this is so, so important. This allows him to concentrate on what he should be doing, where his feet are, where his body is, what he's doing with his body. So make sure that when you are starting to teach your dog, try to start it with a closed fist, and we're going to show you step by step how to convince the dog that that closed fist is worth following. So first things first, let's double check and make sure the dog is comfortable taking food out of our hand. So some dogs, especially if you just adopted or purchased them when they come from a breeder or a shelter, maybe they've never been fed out of anyone's hand before. I've seen lots of puppies that you try to feed them and they are like, well, I don't know, you got to put it on the ground. So make sure your dog is comfortable taking food out of your hand. That's step one. Step two is make sure they like the food. Go to our food video if you are struggling with that, but they have to like the food. So use chicken or steak or anything that the dog really likes, and make sure they're taking food from your hand.
Yes. Yes.
You're going to start to enclose it totally in your fist, and the second that dog takes a sniff of your hand, just a quick sniff, you're going to say yes and open your hand. That's it. Now, we don't want to say yes and open our hand when the teeth are on us, when they're trying to attack our hand or bite our hand. That's why it's so important to do it very quickly, because the dogs typically are not going to go to biting right away. They're going to start with a sniff. So you want to capture that sniff, yes, and open your hand immediately. This teaches the dog the behavior that we want, but more importantly, it gets you used to marking the behavior prior to opening your hand. Now, that marker word doesn't have to be yes. If you use bingo or chip, you probably hear a few different ones, but that's what we call a terminal marker, and it simply means that the dog gets the reward and is released from whatever you're doing. So it just means, yay, you did it, here's your food, and we're done. Now, after you've done maybe 5 to 10 times where the dog sniffed and you said yes and open your hand, you're going to throw a piece of food away from you. So just throw a piece of food away so the dog leaves. Then you're going to hold out your hand. Remember, the seam is facing the dog, seam of your hand is facing the dog. You're going to take your hand either to the left, or you could take your other hand, to the right, or you could take your left hand to the left. Either way, take a hand to the side so that when the dog turns around and comes back towards you after taking their treat, they see this hand outstretched, and you're not going to move it. No moving the hand. Keep it still. See if the dog goes to that hand. So if they go to that hand, yes, and reward. And this is one of the very first tests that we can see if the dog is convinced to follow that hand. Try it in both hands, or take this hand and move it to the side, but bend it out so that that seam is still on their nose. And make sure you are saying yes and opening the hand as soon as they get there. Yes. Good, Betty. Yes. Good girl. Yes. Super. Yes. Good job. Oh, was that something scary? Was that something scary? Yeah. Yes. Good girl. Good girl. Good. Yes. Yes. Super job. Wow, so brave. So brave. If your dog is following the hand without you moving it, so you just put it there and they go right to it, you say yes and you open, you can start to move it for a second, then 2 seconds, then 3 seconds. So you stick your hand out, but instead of staying put, the dog gets their face on it, and instead of saying yes and opening it, you move it for maybe a foot or two, move it a little, yes, and right away. Oh, Eddie. Yes, good job. Yes, good girl. Yes. Yes, super. If the dog disconnects at all from that hand when you move it, you may have moved too quickly, or you may need more repetitions just rewarding in place without the movement. Start to work on this movement, moving your hand around. The dog is on the nose and you say yes and open your hand. A very common mistake people make is they move, then they stop, and then they say yes. I don't want you to do that, and rather than get too deep into it, I'm just going to say it's going to affect your luring in a bad way later on, because the dog learns to read your body language, and what they'll do is when you stop, they're going to start to kind of think the exercise is over. So you want to use your verbal marker. Most importantly, use your verbal marker, yes, before you stop moving. So if you're moving, yes, and then you can stop and open. But don't move, stop, and then say yes. Try to say yes when the dog is doing the behavior we want, which is moving and following you. Every once in a while, you're gonna come across a dog that's gonna rip the living bleep out of your hands when you have food. And that is not okay. Guys, you do not need to go through having your hands bit all over the place. So most importantly, your dog is gonna do the behavior that you mark yes. So when you have a dog that is over the top, you may wanna mark yes when they are off of your fist a little bit. So you can do that by, as the dog's coming in, before they touch your hand, say yes and just drop the food on the ground. You don't need to open your hand. If you're getting bit a lot, don't worry about giving the dog the food from your hand. If they're really nasty about how they take away food, say yes, but throw the food on the ground. And say yes when they're not quite touching your hand so much. One of the reasons dogs learn to be super bitey is because the handler or the owner feeds them for doing that. So most importantly, concentrate all your energy onto rewarding when there's no teeth on your fist. And if you've been leaving food out, that is going to make it a lot worse. They bite fingertips, and fingertips hurt really badly. So part of the reason I always use a fist is my fingertips are protected here. Even if they're biting my fist, it doesn't hurt nearly as much, and I'm not as compelled to just give them the treats because I'm getting bit and it hurts. So if you're getting bit on this fist, as long as it's not, you know, like a serious bite, I'm not giving up my food. I am not feeding the dog for attacking my hand or biting my hand. So concentrate hard. As soon as they give up, maybe they start out biting, but there's going to be a point when they kind of give up and just sniff a little or stop. At that moment, that's the moment you say yes and you throw your food on the ground so that they learn what behavior gets them what they want. Yes, super. She's already learning not to do the whole open mouth nonsense. Yes. 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 Good girl. With most dogs, we do want that contact, so you are gonna wanna say yes when they give that contact, open your hand, and give them their reward. When you try to use your luring down the road for any sort of behavior, just remember, if your dog is having trouble following that lure, you're gonna want to reward earlier. So if you want to take them from point A to point B with the lure and you're having trouble, try rewarding halfway to point B or even a quarter of the way. That usually gets through most problems pretty easily. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video about how to lure. If I missed something or you have any sort of confusion, please post it in the Facebook group and we will clear it up for you.